We are glad to have with us Tony and Lauren Dungy. Tony's in the category of folks who basically need no introduction. First African-American head coach to win the Super Bowl, one of three men to win the Super Bowl both as a player and as a head coach. And he and his wife Lauren have co-written a book that is just out. Really, I would say just out in time for Valentine's Day. Wonderful new book called Uncommon Marriage. Tony and Lauren Dungy, welcome to today's Issues.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you for having us.
So where are you folks this morning? You down in Florida, or are you up in the cold somewhere?
Well, we're in cold Indianapolis, Indiana, kind of freezing weather, although it's pretty nice today, above freezing for the first time since we've been here. But it's amazing. You were mentioning the sinkholes. We live in Tampa, Florida. And about a year ago, there was a gentleman, same situation you talked about. He was in his bedroom and fell through. And we actually had some sinkhole activity at our house that we just got fixed up, so we know what the people in Bowling Green are going through.
That's a truly, truly shocking situation. You know, this is the day before Valentine's Day. It's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, because folks are thinking about love and marriage and romance and together.
At least you better be.
That's right. Everybody better be thinking about that.
If you're a man, anyway.
That's right. So, Lauren, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about how you and Tony met and how you fell in love and got married.
Well, 32 years ago, my pastor, was instrumental in bringing us together. Tony spoke at a father-son banquet. He was invited by the pastor to attend Sunday morning worship service, and I attended the church. My pastor, I think the wheels were turning in his head, and he thought that the two of us definitely needed to meet. We needed to connect. So he made the introductions. We actually met at my parents' house, and let's just say the first meeting it didn't get off to the best of starts. We met, and I was a little hesitant about meeting him anyway because he was involved with sports, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, very much a sports town, and I wasn't excited about meeting a celebrity. Tony also had reservations. He thought that he could do the matchmaking on his own. He didn't need the help of the pastors. We weren't too excited about connecting. We did meet, and we were pleasantly surprised when we came face to face with one another.
So, Tony, when you met Lauren, how long did it take for you to realize, hey, something special is happening here?
Well, it really didn't take me long. I was concerned, though, because this was a big church, and when the pastor said, oh, there's a girl at this church you really ought to meet, I'm thinking if there's a couple thousand people there and she hasn't met anybody, what is she going to look like? Well, I went to the door, and her mom came to the door, and her mom was just beautiful and young. I said, I can't wait until I meet her, and Lauren stepped out, and she was the same way, just stunning. So it didn't take me long, and in probably a minute or a minute and a half, I was thinking, this guy might know what he's talking about here.
Talking to Tony and Lauren Dungy, and the book is titled Uncommon Marriage, Learning About Lasting Love and Overcoming Life's Obstacles Together. I'm Tim Wildman with Ray Pritchard. And Lauren, how do people get a copy of your new book?
They can actually go anywhere. It just came out last Tuesday. It's in all the bookstores, but you could actually go to CoachDungy.com, and it'll tell you all the outlets that have it, audio books. You can get it really in any form. There's a Bible study that goes along with it. That, again, is in most major bookstores. But if you go to CoachDungy.com, you can find the nearest outlet to you that has it.
We were just talking, Tony and Lauren, before y'all got on the air with us. We were talking with a gentleman about, we were talking about the marriage and family in America and how it's disintegrating, sadly. And we've got to turn this thing around if we're going to survive as a country. And as I've said, and I'm a conservative person, but at the same time, this is not a conservative or liberal or Republican Democrat issue. This is common sense. And this is also a biblical principle, but it's a biblical principle that that has been upheld by cultures forever if they've survived, and that is you got to have strong families. And in order to have strong families, you've got to and intact families where the mother and the father train the children, and they raise them, and then they do the same to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. But what we got going on in our country today, sadly, the last couple of decades, we've got the disintegration of the family unit. Marriage is falling apart, and that's one of the reasons, Lauren, you and Tony have written this book, is to try to encourage people of all ethnicities to stick it out.
Absolutely, I
Go
agree
ahead.
with that. I think it's so important to have that commitment in your marriage, to make that commitment that for better or worse, we're sticking together. We're going to work through those challenges. We're going to work through those difficult times that we'll face, and you will face challenges in a marriage, but we honor our marriage. We believe that God brought us together, and we're to be together. It's a union that's lasting, and I think so many people don't take that vow seriously. It's good for as long as we're happy and things are going well, but when you get to a season of your life when there are some challenges, difficulties, it's very tempting, it's very easy to just walk away from the marriage. And I think society kind of perpetuates that idea that if you're not happy, if you're struggling, you can walk away.
And you're exactly right. I coached 28 years in the National Football League, and when I started out, you get these 21-year-olds, you come in, they come to your team, you ask them about their background, and most of the kids that I had, the players I had, came from two-parent homes. But now, my last few years in coaching, it was almost rare to find that young man to come to us at 21 who said, yeah, my parents were together, this is how I was raised. So that was another one of the reasons we wanted to write the book, just to, as you say, to encourage our country to understand that God does have this design for the family. We've got to be his ambassadors, but we're not going to be able to do it properly if we don't have that union together that is linked by God.
What about the chapter 10? It's called An Unsettled Season. Tony, both of y'all feel free to comment on this, but what is this part of your life about?
Well, that was really when we were in Indianapolis, and we had a very, very good football team. And we thought we were going to the Super Bowl and excited about that part of it. But things didn't go that way. We didn't end up going to the Super Bowl. We lost in the playoffs, and we also lost our son that year. And that was a difficult time for us, and a time when some marriages can fall apart at that point. You have career disappointments, you have family disappointments, and what we realized is we had to stay together, and we had to look to the Lord if we were going to come through this. And by looking to the Lord, it drew us closer together.
You know, in your book, you talk about your son Jamie and his suicide. I mean, you're remarkably honest and open about the pain of that moment and the days and weeks and months afterwards. I mean, that I suppose the hardest thing parents can even contemplate. How did you stay together? And some people not only give up on marriage, but they give up on God and walk away from everything. How did you come through that with your marriage and your faith intact?
Well, I think any time you experience a disappointment or a loss, such as losing a child, it's very hard to get through that disappointment without having Christ in your life. And we just relied on our faith to pull us through those dark days. And it was so important to work together, to pray together, to hear each other's hearts, to support one another. And we found that we grieved differently. Tony was so supportive of me during those times when I was sad and I was just really having a hard time just understanding and dealing with this loss. And I was also supportive for Tony during that time. So it was a very challenging time in our lives, but working together, supporting one another, and being there for each other, and having our faith to carry us through is what we learned we were able to get through.
I saw, that a mother's grief is different than a father's grief. It just is. There's no way to describe it. So I had to be supportive. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of people give up on God at that point. And we really, that's what carried us through. We said we've told people about our faith when we've had big victories, and I've gotten head coaching jobs. I said, isn't the Lord great? Well, at that time, we couldn't say, well, the Lord isn't great now because he decided to take our son home. So we had to just say, God does have a good plan. We don't understand it now. We don't know why, but we're still going to follow the Lord, and I think that was the important thing.
Talking to Tony and Lauren Dungy on the program this half hour, and their new book is called Uncommon Marriage, Learning About Lasting Love and Overcoming Life's Obstacles Together. We always encourage you to patronize your local Christian bookstore. But if you want to go online and buy the book, certainly Coach mentioned his website. What is it, just CoachDungy.com?
That is correct. Yep, CoachDungy.com. But you're right. All the Christian bookstores have it. We've done some book signings in some wonderful Christian stores the last couple of days, and it's been awesome to see the support.
What about the life in your profession when you were coaching? Tony, now you've got the Sunday night NBC job. Do you like that? You like that a little better?
I like it it's a little better for me than coaching. I still get to stay up with football. I still get to communicate with my friends in the game, but I'm able to be home more and around the family a little bit more. So it's been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and what do you care who wins or loses? You just,
well, I still have friends. And
I know.
Win,
but you probably most games you probably have friends on both teams. So I mean, it's just
a lot of times.
Yeah,
but it's not. You're right. It's not devastating when a team loses. I was pulling for Peyton Manning and the Broncos because he played for me.
Yeah.
But when they lost the game, my life did go on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to ask you about that, and Lauren, comment on this too. Obviously, people are listening to us live in all kinds of professions. But the one you were in, as a head coach in the National Football League, I mean, yes, you're compensated well, coaches are financially, but at the same time, the pressures are enormous, and the responsibilities are incredible. And so, and the balancing act you have to do between family and your job, because I mean, if you don't win enough, you get fired, and you get fired, you have to look for. I mean, that's so. How did you handle the pressures of that come with coaching a professional football team like that?
Well, I was very fortunate because the first coach I played for and worked for was a guy by the name of Chuck Noll, who coached the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 70s and 80s. And Coach Noll told us something I never forgot my whole career. He said, football is your job because you're now getting paid for it, but it's not your life. Don't let it become your life.
That's
you
good.
You have to look for your life's work.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great family man. He encouraged us as young coaches to get home, to take family time. He gave us 6 weeks off before we started the season every year. And he said, don't come in the office. Don't be around. Make sure you use those 6 weeks to have fun with your family because we are going to grind once the season starts. But he gave us such a great role model for that. And I think I always understood that football wasn't my life, and I was following the Lord. The Lord had given me a platform in football. But that was it. It wasn't my life, and I wasn't going to succumb to the pressures. And then I had a great wife who understood that and helped me as well. And maybe I'll let Lauren comment on her thoughts on that.
Well, I think it was also very important to have the good communication. We talk about that in our book, Uncommon Marriage, that in order to do well and to be supportive of Tony and what he was doing outside the home, we had to communicate with each other and know what each other's needs were and to be on the same page. And so we were intentional about that. And we wanted Tony to enjoy a career and to be successful at it, but we were supportive with him and tried to stay involved in what he was doing. But he was also involved in our world, our life, so that we weren't strangers. We had a marriage that we were able to, to survive and to do well in spite of the challenges and the difficulties that come up with when you're involved in such a very busy career.
Lauren, a question just occurred to me. When Tony was coaching, I mean, you're either on top of the world or you're at the very bottom. There's not much in between. And, when you win, it's great. Everybody loves you. How did you, as a wife, how did you respond when you saw, Tony, that they'd lose a game, lose another game or something? How do you respond when you see your husband being, he's not just being discussed and dissected, but fried and fricasseed and talk radio and in newspapers and people you meet? How do you keep your equilibrium when you see your husband on his job going through a hard time?
It was a challenge. It was difficult. I remember reading the paper and hearing the comments, and fans, as you alluded to, can be very fickle. If you're on top of the world and you're doing wonderful things for the team and the team is number one or having success, everybody loves your husband. Everybody loves Tony. But you make a few mistakes or the team loses a few games, and everyone is suggesting that it's probably best that he moves on to another team. So it was difficult. It was challenging. I expected comments to be made when we didn't win games, but I knew that Tony needed to have the support. As his number one fan, I was there, win or lose, for the games, and he knew that when he came home that I wasn't going to judge him or question him about his decision-making or what happened at work. I was there to be supportive and to encourage him.
So you didn't ever, Lauren, you didn't ever say 3rd and 10, you run the ball. What were you thinking?
Well, I did have a few questions about some of the play calling, but I usually left that later in the evening after he settled in.
But I do think one of the great things she did, especially